Politics is a word we hear all the time. It's on the news, it's at work, it's probably at your family dinner table. But if you had to stop and really define it, what would you say? What does it actually mean? Is it about some grand, noble ideal, or is it something a lot more basic? Okay, let's get into it. So, let's just ask it straight up. What is politics? Turns out, the answer isn't so simple. It's a journey, really, one that takes us from the highest ideals of the ancient world all the way to the cold, hard reality of how power actually works. So the word itself, it comes from ancient Greece, politica, and it literally meant the affairs of the cities. For thinkers like Aristotle, politics was like the master science. It was how we as a community work together to build a good and just life. It's a beautiful idea, right? A really optimistic place to start. But let's be honest, if you strip away all the philosophy, all the high-minded ideals, politics boils down to one single fundamental thing: power. Who has it, how do they get it, and what do they do with it once they have it? That's the engine driving literally every political system that has ever existed. And this whole game of power, it plays out in two different arenas. First, there's the one we all know, formal politics. Governments, laws, elections, the whole shebang. But then there's informal politics. And this is the stuff you see every single day. The power dynamics in your office, the debates over family decisions, even who holds influence in your friend group. In that sense, yeah, politics is absolutely everywhere. To really understand the raw, kind of unfiltered nature of political power, we have to talk about one of the most controversial books ever written. It was a guide for rulers that didn't just bend the old rules of morality, it basically lit them on fire, looking at power with a cold, ruthless honesty that still shocks people today. This is it, The Prince. It was written around 1513 by an Italian diplomat, Niccolò Machiavelli. Now, for centuries, all the books for leaders were about being virtuous and just and a good person, and then Machiavelli comes along and basically says, yeah, that's nice, but it's not how you're going to survive. And this quote right here, this gets to the absolute core of his whole philosophy. Machiavelli is saying that any leader who tries to be the good guy all the time is just doomed to fail. Why? Because you're surrounded by people who are not playing by those rules. So the big lesson here? You have to deal with the world as it is, not as you wish it was. So this focus on what is instead of what ought to be led Machiavelli to some, well, let's just say some pretty startling conclusions about what it really takes to hold on to power. This is where we get the whole idea of political realism. He was one of the first people to just come out and say it. A ruler's goals, things like the glory and survival of the state, are so important that they can justify actions that are, by any normal standard, completely immoral. We're talking lying, cheating, even violence. If it serves the state, Machiavelli says it's on the table. And this leads to one of his most chilling ideas, criminal virtue. It sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it? But for Machiavelli, it was a very precise political tool. His advice was that if you, as a ruler, need to do cruel things to lock down your power, you do them all at once. Be swift, be decisive. Get the dirty work over with fast so you can spend the rest of your time building up a better reputation. And Machiavelli's poster child for this was a guy named Cesare Borgia, a super ruthless and ambitious duke. At one point, Borgia found out some of his own captains were plotting against him. So what'd he do? He had them captured and executed. Brutal? Yes. But it instantly crushed the rebellion and cemented his power. For Machiavelli, that was criminal virtue in action. This kind of cold-blooded logic brings us to maybe the most famous question in all of political philosophy. It's a dilemma that leaders have been wrestling with for 500 years, and it's just as relevant today. So what do you think? If you were in charge, would you rather your people love you or fear you? Ideally you'd want both, right? But Machiavelli knew that's not always an option. And there it is. His answer is as pragmatic as it is chilling. He argued that love is fickle. People will break that bond of love whenever it's convenient for them. But fear? Fear is held in place by the constant threat of punishment. And that, he said, is a much, much more reliable way to keep people in line. Now, he's clear, a ruler must avoid being hated. But fear? Fear is a powerful political tool. And he used history to prove his point. He compares two legendary Roman generals. On one side, you've got Hannibal. His army was a mix of all different kinds of soldiers. And Machiavelli says it was his inhuman cruelty that kept them all unified and stopped any rebellions. Then you have Scipio, a general famous for being merciful. And the result? His own troops mutinied against him.
For Machiavelli, the lesson was crystal clear.
So, as you can imagine, Machiavelli's ideas were radical, seriously shocking for his time. But their influence was immediate, and it has proven to be incredibly long-lasting.
What's wild is that the prince immediately jumped over all the political and religious fences of the time. You had Catholic rulers like Emperor Charles V and Protestant rulers like King Henry VIII of England. Both of them studied it. It wasn't about their specific ideology. It was a universal textbook on how to get and keep power. And that influence has just never really gone away. The American founding fathers studied his work. Napoleon Bonaparte apparently scribbled notes in his personal copy. Dictators like Mussolini took inspiration from him. And get this, even 20th century mob bosses reportedly treated the prince like their Bible. I mean, that tells you just how potent these ideas are. Which brings us right back to our original question. Machiavelli didn't just challenge that idealistic Greek view of politics, he ripped it down and rebuilt it as a ruthless science of survival. So, what is politics really? Is it the noble art of trying to build a better world? Or is it the cold, hard science of power, where the only rule is to win? That's the question the prince forced the world to ask, and it's a question we're still grappling with today.